Assalamu alaikum all. I hope you are doing well. Another very interesting day in the markets, another historical day for Bitcoin. We did touch 99,000 for Bitcoin today, and we have had basically the longest or largest monthly candle for Bitcoin ever. The low for Bitcoin's price this month was 66,000. We're now at 98,000. As I mentioned, we touched 99,000. It's a gain of 40% that we experienced in just the first 20 days of November. So, yeah, it's been a historical month and for good reason. If we look at the ranking of assets by market cap, most valuable assets in the world, Bitcoin has now beat Saudi Aramco by a comfortable margin. We saw it beat Saudi Aramco in terms of market cap earlier, but then there was some back and forth. Now it seems to be solidly in the 7th position in terms of ranking for most valuable assets. And really, there's no stopping it from here. It's only a matter of time before it beats out Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and then eventually gold itself, which is the long has been the thesis for Bitcoin holders. Now, looking at other positions, I would be remiss not to mention Bitdeer. I'm sure many are, concerned about Bitdeer. The fact of the matter is they just raised some money. That's really the entire day was a tough one for Bitcoin miners generally. And that's why you saw most Bitcoin miners, with exception to Marathon, most Bitcoin miners were in the red today. But after hours, Bitdeer rather announced a proposed private placement for 360 million of convertible senior notes. And obviously, when there is news of dilution, investors may want to sell in order for their positions not to be diluted. But this is par for the course. That is the dilution and raising money from companies like Bitdeer. The plan to offer 360 million in convertible senior notes through a private placement will be used to fund. The proceeds will be used to fund data center expansion, ASIC mining rig development, and working capital. So, you can either issue debt to do these things, to fund these projects, or you can issue equity. And the question that investors need to ask is, do I trust the management of this particular company in order to create more shareholder value with the money that it raised than the dilution that it causes? And in the case of Bitdeer and the projects that it intends to use the money for, I think there's a very high chance that indeed it does that. So maybe raising 360 million in additional funds, but if it creates billions of dollars in value for shareholders, then I would call that a good deal. But it does take patience. If you'll recall yesterday, PLL, the stock got punished because it too announced that there would be some dilution for PLL shareholders. And as mentioned in a note to PIF members, I thought that the merger with Sayona was going to be a positive for the company, for shareholders. Today, it's up 15%. So these things happen, but I think if they shouldn't really impact the thesis that we have for a particular position. And as it relates to Bitdeer, there's a healthy amount of insider ownership, which aligns the well-being of shareholders with management of the company. And so that if management has a very big stake in the company, then if they are diluting shares, they are going to be impacted by that, and therefore they must be doing so for a compelling reason and because they think that they can create more value with the amount raised than the dilution that they cause. So I'm not really concerned about Bitdeer's raise. I think it's to be expected. I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. And eventually, I think it will rebound, inshallah. By the way, I should mention this. Nothing in this video is meant to be personalized financial advice, so make sure to do your own due diligence before making any investing decisions. And also for PIF membership, we're still running a promotion, 35% off for a limited time, a limited number of uses. Use code BullRun24 to get your 35% off while this promotion lasts. In other news, we've been following basically the game theory play out for Bitcoin, wherein sovereigns and corporations are racing to add Bitcoin to their reserves. Today, or yesterday rather, CZ, the founder of Binance, mentioned that there will be a race for nations to print money to buy Bitcoin. And not just nations, really, corporations and even states, municipalities, as we'll see. The Bitcoin strategic reserve, no one can afford to be last. This is very true because there's only 21 million. And the more people wait, the higher the price goes. So this is really going to cause a rush to the door, I think, with regards to creating a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Michael Saylor will be going to Redmond, Washington to speak with Microsoft, which is considering putting some of its near $100 billion in cash and storing it as Bitcoin. And he'll be talking about his experience doing that, which I think is a pretty compelling argument for anyone to follow suit. Speaking of sovereigns that are looking to add Bitcoin to their strategic reserves, the Texas legislator, Giovanni Capriglione, mentioned that he wanted Texas to have a strategic reserve first. And Marathon mentioned that, or they actually raised 1 billion in convertible notes. We've mentioned in a previous live that they were aiming for 700 million, but they've actually upped it to 1 billion. And Marathon Digital is the largest public Bitcoin miner. They're raising this money to buy Bitcoin directly. So never mind trying to mine the thing, let's just buy it. It's that good of an investment. And when you look at other companies that have done this, it's worked out quite well for them. And the longer this list gets and the better the results get, the more compelling the argument becomes for more and more companies and sovereigns to follow suit. So if you look at MicroStrategy, for example, they're in the first position with regards to the number of total Bitcoin that they've managed to stockpile, and their entry value was right below 10 billion. That's what they paid for them. Now that the value of their stash of Bitcoin is close to 24.5 billion. Tesla bought its Bitcoin for 336 million. It's now worth 1.1 billion. Coinbase bought 270 million worth of Bitcoin. It's now worth close to 900 million. And Block bought 220 million, now worth 781 million. So the longer this list gets, and the more positive results people get storing Bitcoin, the more companies are going to want to do it. And I really think that right now we're at that point where there's going to be a stampede of corporates and sovereigns trying to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. And so I think it makes sense for retail investors to position themselves accordingly. And In more good news for Bitcoin, SEC Chair Gary Gensler will be stepping down, and that is in anticipation of getting fired after Trump and his administration assume office. And he's likely to be replaced if the public comments of Trump are anything to go by. He's likely to be replaced by a much more friendly or crypto friendly SEC chair. And Gary Gensler was known for trying to block BTC ETFs until he couldn't block them anymore because he was sued and the court ruled in favor of the litigants that were suing the SEC for not allowing them to launch a Bitcoin ETF. And it turns out that the Bitcoin ETF that they launched, which Gary Gensler tried his best to block, they are about to catch up with gold in terms of assets under management, even though they're less than 1 year old, and gold ETFs have been around for more than 20 years. And they're basically the most successful ETF launch ever. So Gary Gensler will be forever known for trying to block the launch of the most in-demand, most successful ETF ever in history. So not really the legacy that anyone necessarily shoots for, but his term in office will be coming to an end. So with that being said, there's a lot of wind in the sales of Bitcoin still. We're at 99,000, close to, or we touched 99,000 today. Currently we're at 98,300, but I think it's really only a matter of time before we go above 100,000 and then very quickly make new highs after that. So I think that we're still in the midst of a bull run. There's still a lot to go. I understand that people may be looking at Bitcoin miners and saying, "Hey, that meme where this someone's holding a stick and waiting for something to move." Well, that's how a lot of Bitcoin mining investors are feeling right now. But eventually, I think it's going to happen. With regards to Bitdeer specifically, they're in the business of not only Bitcoin mining, but creating the rigs and the chips that are needed for Bitcoin mining. And the higher the price of Bitcoin goes, the more valuable those tools are. So I think that eventually Bitcoin mining stocks will reflect this appreciation in Bitcoin. There's typically a lag. But I don't think it's necessarily anything to worry about. I don't think the correlation between Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners has been broken. What we are experiencing is the lag that happens between the prices of these assets. And what we are experiencing is the cost of the returns, inshallah, that we will enjoy, because returns come at a cost. And that cost often in the field of investing comes in the form of having patience. So what you are doing by having the patience to see the theses you have about your portfolio positions play out is you are paying the cost of the returns that inshallah you will reap, inshallah. All right, so with that, let's go to questions. Assalamu alaikum to everyone in the comments. I really appreciate you guys coming. Let's go to Sammy. Is it possible to have these lives 2 to 3 hours earlier? I'm watching from France and it's currently midnight. So I'll be on the road starting from Friday for like at least the next week. So I think what I'll be doing is starting the lives closer to market open than market close. So yeah, so for the next 10 days at least, after Friday. So Friday will be the last day I go live at this time. I may go live a bit earlier, but after that, I'm going to be going live in the morning. And then we'll see whichever more people prefer is what we'll stick to, inshallah, moving forward. Hey, Salamat, Rashad, nice to see you. Do you think healthcare sector will rebound with Trump appointees? It's really hard to tell what is going to happen in terms of new regulations with the Trump administration and how that's going to impact healthcare. What I try to do is not try to predict these things and rather focus on investing in the best healthcare companies, and these companies will tend to adapt to whatever gets thrown at them. uh, Ali says, will iron earnings encompass some of this recent BTC bull run? No, we won't see the November numbers in the IRIS Energy earnings that they report because they're reporting a period before the recent rally. But what we will see is a forecast, and that's what investors will be paying close attention to because investing is a forward looking game. It's very hard to time pullbacks, obviously. I think that it's a good idea to take profits while you're on the way up. But just take enough so that if there is a pullback, you're happy. If there isn't a pullback, you're happy as well. I think that we will get a Bitcoin miner run before the end of the year. And I think we'll get another Bitcoin miner run, probably a pullback in January, and then another Bitcoin miner run later, maybe March or April of 2025. This is just my prediction right now. Allahu alam. And I will have a update, obviously, for you guys when Iris Energy reports earnings, inshallah. So, um, inshallah, we'll have a lot more clarity about the company. Honestly, I'm not really concerned. This is just this volatility that we are experiencing is par for the course. Inshallah, soon for the I told you so day or for iron and Bitdeer. So, any sectors besides crypto and Bitcoin that you're bullish on? Well, I think the Nvidia earnings yesterday are quite instructive with regards to what's really hot in the economy right now, and that is artificial intelligence. And if you are dealing with artificial intelligence, then you understand how quickly it is progressing. And I shared yesterday, Elon Musk mentions that he thinks AGI will be a thing by at latest 2026. And I think Sam Altman said he thought it would we'd basically reach AGI in 2025. So everything in the supply chain of artificial intelligence, including things like data centers, including things like power generation, storage, and transportation. Those are all very hot sectors, I think, that will be very much in demand for the foreseeable future. Inshallah, I'll do a deep dive on AMD, inshallah. Yeah, actually, Fred, you bring up a very good point. Do you think BTC pump is partially being caused by options market? Actually, I think this week the primary reason for BTC's pump is the options market. I think that was something that really not enough people are talking about. But I think that that is basically the primary news event that caused the bullishness in BTC that we've experienced this week, despite the geopolitical, tensions that we've experienced, despite many other market players not doing as well. BTC exhibiting the strength that it has was, I think, really due to the options market and the steady stream of good news for BTC that is causing people to become more and more bullish. So, Fred, I will say that in terms of BTC ETFs, that's sort of the route that I've gone and the route we've gone with the PIF portfolio. So, we have a BTC ETF that we add to periodically, and that's performed very well for us. And I just feel better and more secure with owning an ETF than I do Bitcoin directly. Hey, thanks, Louay, for the suggestion. I'll take a look at it, inshallah. With regards to Litecoin, I actually am. I think that it won't probably won't perform as good as Bitcoin, but I think it's sort of the silver, if you will, to Bitcoin being gold. And so the idea of Litecoin, I think, basically the same as Bitcoin, but something. So I would kind of rank it between Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Litecoin was a fork of Bitcoin, and I believe Dogecoin was a fork of a fork of Bitcoin. And so, I think it's fine. The question is, what's going to cause people to buy it as opposed to Bitcoin? I think most people are kind of forgetting about Litecoin unless, something happens that causes it to become relevant again. Um, and I don't really see any near-term catalyst, but the concept is solid, I think. It's really hard to tell if Litecoin has a future. It depends on how many people have it on their radar and actually deal with it. It could be just a zombie coin, to be honest, at this point. So Azur asked a very good question. Says, "Salam alaikum, brother Rakaan. It's easy to get carried away in the bull run. What should signs can indicate a bear market approaching?" Well, there are a number of things that we like to look at. For example, with Bitcoin, we look at the MVRV score. We look at other indicators like the stock to income model. We look at technical indicators like the relative strength index to see where we are right now. I think in terms of weighting, it's much more important to put weightings on the fundamentals for the assets that you own versus the technicals. Technicals are something that you can look at, like relative strength index, but in terms of weighting, I would put much more weight on the fundamentals. I know that a lot of people flip those around and actually talk more about technicals than they do fundamentals, and I think that's a mistake. So long as we have our fundamentals in view and we're keeping an eye out on valuations and what makes sense based on the prospects and based on the cash flows that are being generated by these assets, I think inshallah we'll be able to understand when it's time to get out, when things are frothy, and when it's time to basically just ride the waves of profits that we're generating. So We will continue to be data driven, really, with our decision making, and hopefully not get caught up in either greed or fear, inshallah. All right, guys, if you haven't liked the video yet, do leave a like, and that would be really appreciated. Subscribe. Make sure to take advantage of the promotion that we got going on. Details to that is in the description. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you all.